Welcome to Making Our Way Forward, a podcast where we share compelling life stories and learn from the experience of everyday entrepreneurs. At NACCE, we celebrate diversity and invite you to join the conversation as we talk to entrepreneurs and leaders from all walks of life. We hope that by telling their stories, we bring you inspiration, empower you to take action, and ignite entrepreneurship in your community. Welcome to this episode of Making Our Way Forward, where we get into the lives and experiences of entrepreneurs across the world. I'm very happy to have a very special guest with us today that actually has a really interesting connection to our organization, NACCE, and is an entrepreneur, but is also an academic. So it's my pleasure to welcome President Steve Spinelli to the program. He is currently the president of Babson College, but that's only a part of his story. So I want to welcome you.
It's a pleasure to be here. It feels a bit back to the future. Reflecting on NACCE and the whole community college entrepreneurship movement and the incredible advances that you've made in the field over 20 or 30 years of really good hard work. It's also a validation of entrepreneurship as a ubiquitous mindset that can lift all people. So it's an honor to talk with you.
Well, I'm really happy to be here. And I mentioned this to you a little bit earlier. I was doing some research into you, and I came across an article when you were in the Philadelphia area, and the title of it was, "I Love My Job." And I think that is just such a blessing for people that can get into that space. And as I was reading about it, and if you don't mind, I'm going to share a little bit about how you responded when the interviewer asked you about where you grew up, because there's an interesting connection also that I have not far from Springfield that I wanted to share with you. So they asked you, at that time you were with Thomas Jefferson University as the chancellor, a very esteemed position, and we're getting ready to step in into an even greater position in that area. So they asked you about you growing up, and your response was you grew up in the Italian American section of Springfield, Massachusetts, called the South End, an end where there were immigrants and first generation Italian Americans. And you talked about what that experience was like and how that shaped you. And I'd love to just begin the conversation with maybe some memories that you have and how you think it affected you long term.
I think it's an interesting American, I don't know if it's uniquely American, don't have enough experience around the whole world to be able to say that, but I think it is an interesting American story about immigration and community and aspiration. Many people came to the United States to start a life, but you think about how entrepreneurial you have to be to leave where you were with virtually no money to go to a community that you only really heard about and then go build a life that you think is going to be better. So I think that there is, embedded in all of that experience is the foundations of an entrepreneurial mindset and one that requires aspiration as a part of sort of your role in that community. And I think it happens in a lot of communities. Mine was an Italian American. The Jewish community was just north of us in the North End, and the Puerto Rican community and the Black community. It was incredibly balkanized when I think about it in today's world. And I think we have, in a lot of ways, grown beyond that. We still got a long way to grow. But I think that the sense of forming the community and looking at value creation as both individual and corporate, both for me, my family, and others. I think that's a foundational concept that is bigger than I want to make money or I want to start a business. And I think it also gives you the motivation to stick with it during very difficult times. And everybody has very difficult times. No, you're not special if you have difficult times. So you're going to go through that. And I think it becomes a foundational concept around how we teach. You have a personal responsibility, you have a set of aspirations, you work in an ecosystem, you build a community, there is value creation, hopefully. And the more that value creation is both social and economic, the more lasting it is, and probably the larger it is.
Right. And the pathway to higher education. And I read about this. You spent 15 years in the classroom, teaching at Babson, one of the top programs in the world. And in addition to these other universities, but remembering where you came from. And I was thinking about it on Making Our Way Forward. My co-host Jeff and I share sometimes personal stories, and part of my family is from Chicopee, so very working class Irish Americans. And I didn't even know that, but it's miles from the NACCE. We still hold an administrative office there on the campus of Springfield Technical College, and it doesn't escape me sort of your roots. And when I think about, my parents who were, sort of the first generation to go to college and have that opportunity, and how important that was to my grandparents. And I think about today, the work that you're doing, which we're going to get into, some of the tremendous things that you've learned and created over time. But one of the things, when you founded Jiffy Lube in 1979, that's one of my husband's favorite franchises, because he likes, you can always know what to expect. It's clean, you know what to do. And there's an interesting, I'm sure, number of stories with that. But I think in terms of your journey to higher ed, it's interesting as a young man that you really had that opportunity on the ground floor to create that. So maybe you could share with some of our listeners around the world how that happened, and what you learned from it, and then maybe some memories that you have around it.
Yeah, while I was going through it, it almost seemed like a random set of events that collide and the variables come together and here's an outcome. Upon reflection, I either am shaping the story in my mind, or it is a more intentional process, or a more logical process, I think, than just serendipity. The whole, you grow up in the neighborhood and you're supposed to have aspirations and think about what the future is, and you think in a holistic way. And the pathway for a lot of people, especially immigrant families, was education. And if you got an education, it was a pathway to at least a job. And interestingly, I think in a lot of ethnic communities, the jobs sometimes were made through crafts, through specific skills. And so you could have a job, and a lot of those jobs found their way into small businesses. Landscaping, furniture, upholstery, all kinds of different ventures. And that was sort of the root of my Jiffy Lube experience. When I met the founder is my football coach, and he recruited the college football coach. And he recruited some of the players to sort of join him in the venture. He was now a successful entrepreneur. Who then went to coaching, then went back into entrepreneurship. And, you think of it as stages, but it all gets mixed up into a life. And when we started, it was a rough go. What's a Jiffy Lube was usually I'd say we started Jiffy Lube, and they say, what's a Jiffy Lube? Today it seems like an iconic almost brand, but back then it was sort of silly. People thought it was silly. And came to the conclusion that either I wasn't good enough or wasn't educated enough to be successful. And having a reasonable sized ego, I said, it must be education. I must be good enough. So that led me to Babson, and where I did my MBA. And it was the first real manifestation of this thought and action paradigm, that if you think deeply and act decisively, you're going to have better outcomes. They're not linear. And there's lots of ups and downs and all of that. But the underpinning of action is thoughtfulness, of looking at the variables, at predicting, at working hard to see how they're going to come together and synthesize. And that was, I think, a real foundational kind of experience for me. I used to go to Babson on Wednesday nights, and on Thursday mornings, I had a whole new plan of what we were going to do. But when I went to Babson Thursday nights, usually I would take a course in an area I was having a problem with. And the direct application of knowledge in these frameworks, and then I could put it in the context of Jiffy Lube, I felt like I was getting light years ahead. And we started to do better and better and better, and we built a national organization. And when it all came to an end, when we sold it, I had the economic means to then say, okay, what's next? And that's what got me into teaching and saying, well, it worked for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I was looking at a list of your alumni. So impressive. One thing I read that you have 42,000 alumni. It might be more than that now. But how we got connected to you were one of your alumni, Chip Weismiller and his wife, Stuart, as you know, created this Everyday Entrepreneur Venture Fund. And it's amazing to me because I think what it does is it really captures the spirit of your life experience and your success, because it's looking at how can you take existing resources and help people without access to capital, sometimes immigrants, women, people of color, people from other communities that don't get friends and family money or don't have that opportunity, but need a little bit of support. And I know it's funny, I was talking with Chip, and he's so proud of his affiliation with Babson, but he's thrilled that you're the president. And it's funny getting to know them over time and their legacy of really wanting to provide this opportunity. And one of the things, we had a chance to speak with you a little bit earlier, and you were talking a bit about a transformational gift that, in the time that you've been there as the president, you were able to receive and really make some great progress with over the pandemic even. So I wondered if you might speak a little bit about that Leadership Village. How did that start? What have you created with it, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, it's been a great ride. Coming back to Babson just pre-pandemic, understanding that Babson's been number one in entrepreneurship in higher education for 26 or 27 or 28 years, some very long time, and has the largest entrepreneurship faculty, the largest research conference, the most curriculum, the most market-facing programming. We have MBA programs, masters in entrepreneurship, all of that. And we're thinking, oh man, we can do some really great stuff with this. And then the pandemic hits. And what we found was, and I'll weave in the transformational gift into this, is we could actually do more, because we had an entrepreneurial mindset, and we said we have a responsibility to deliver education under any condition. That we can't stop our mission. So we really did say, if we're teaching entrepreneurship, we better be entrepreneurial in the way we do this, and we transformed everything. But part of that, frankly, was Arthur Blank, who was a graduate of Babson College. He's the founder of Home Depot, the owner of the Atlanta Falcons and the Atlanta United, and a lot of stuff. He's just an incredible entrepreneur. He's probably, as great an entrepreneur as he is, he's probably a better philanthropist. He's the most entrepreneurial philanthropist, where he believes in co-creation. And it is not dissimilar to the capital acquisition process of any entrepreneur. If you have a great idea and you can communicate that idea, and it creates value for the investor, and you can communicate that value, there's a lot of capital out there to get. And we went to Arthur and said, we think that we can do a lot more in entrepreneurship, because the world is becoming more connected. The social networking, economic network has not led to the level of educational networking we think the world needs. The need for units of knowledge is growing, and we're still in a bit of our own bubbles here. So we want to get out of the bubble, and there's a bunch of things we want to do. And one of them is to create an Entrepreneurial Leadership Village. The village, which will be a physical site on campus. We're going through the process of evaluating that and designing it, and it's really fun to do. And there's a virtual component. We believe entrepreneurial leaders can impact ecosystems everywhere. And to do that, you need a foundation of digital support and programs. And can we take all of that stuff we do at Babson, and can we digitize it so that what we can do in person, we can also do virtually? And that's where serendipity really does have an impact. We had some vision about what that could be, and we started to formulate the plan. And Arthur gave us a $50 million gift, which is a lot of money. And we have a lot of support. We've raised, in addition to that, about another $41 million to match the gift. So we're getting close to $100 million for the project. And as we put all that design in place, COVID happens, and it accelerated the need for what we're doing. How do you deliver that education? First, we start with how do we deliver that education to the 3,200 Babson students that we've made a commitment to? And so we did that transformation, and we said, wait a minute, this is an investment. This isn't a pivot. This is a growth in the platform. We can now deliver education to almost anyone, almost anywhere, in almost any form. We can do curriculum, we can do research, we can do market interface, we can do it across a spectrum of industries and people and ages and growth cycles. Holy cow, we really can be everywhere 5 years faster than we thought we could be. Mm-hmm. So, sort of from the ashes comes an incredible explosion of the concept. Now, when we first thought of the Entrepreneurial Leadership Village, there is a physical facility on campus that we're going to renovate, and there'll be maker space and living space and eating space and incubator space, community space, dormitory space, so that we get all the components, all the stakeholders in an entrepreneurial process bumping up against each other and giving them a nice place to do that bumping. And we thought that will be the first, and then we'll experiment, then we'll become virtual. Well, it's flipped now, which is again part of the entrepreneur. So we're launching a virtual curriculum as we speak. We've done a bunch of beta tests on launching it. We're connecting into different colleges across the world. We're bringing in different audiences. We're doing the kinds of recordings and programming. We're doing the kind of research. And the village is going to be a three-dimensional manifestation of the entrepreneurial process. Wow. And we want to connect, by the way, since I have you here, we want to connect to the community colleges. We believe that the community colleges are embedded in the communities. The name fits. And those communities are important ecosystems that if we can connect to, we can get closer to the small businesses that could scale, the companies and investors that want to be part of that scaling. My work 100 years ago at STCC, Springfield Technical Community College, was about understanding the educational ecosystem and how it attached to the marketplace. And one of the reasons I got involved with NACCE was because I thought it was just so important to support the small businesses and to give them a view of how those small businesses could grow and have a greater impact across a broad spectrum of stakeholders, including those who typically didn't have access to capital or access to education or access to the mindset of entrepreneurship. It's amazing when you teach entrepreneurship, you expose someone to it. It's a drug. It's one of those wonderful drugs that it lights people's life up. They really feel empowered by the process of creating value by finding opportunity and solving problems.
Yeah, you can't stop doing it. And
that's right.
I have a fun fact as you were talking. We spoke, Ron Thomas, who I'm sure you remember back 18 years ago in the founding of NACCE, was one of the founding board members and spoke about Andy Schabelli, who we spoke with a couple of years ago when we were writing actually about you and really your impact, and Tommy Goodrow and all of those days earlier where you thought about, well, maybe there should be a program where community colleges can come together and talk about entrepreneurship and really make it part of the fabric of the institution. So doesn't just reside in the business school or engineering program. It's everywhere. It's in arts and history and every aspect of it. And I really think about, historically, sometimes people don't get to see sort of the fruits of their labor, but I think about that and talking with Kevin Drum and so many people that have known you over the years and have kind of followed you from a distance that maybe your path hasn't intersected, but now you look at NACCE not only as a community of over 350 community colleges, but a growing number of historically Black colleges and universities. And I know time is running short, but I would love for you to talk maybe just about some of the work that you've done and some of the case studies, because I know equity is really important to you. And you were thinking about it decades earlier before we had George Floyd and all these things that have brought it to the national forefront of conversation. But maybe just share a thought or two about that.
Yeah, my engagement with the HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, was mostly selfish. There's just so much talent, and almost no one's tapping that talent. Are you kidding? We could do great things. And so we really got engaged in the process of understanding the mission of the historically Black college and university, and what they needed from a partnership perspective. And what we saw was we got so much more than we gave, because there were so many incredible stories. In entrepreneurship, the entrepreneur is central to the story, is central to the process of entrepreneurship. That's why we're doing entrepreneurial leadership, to make it more personal, to make it more student-centric, make it more leader-centric. And we would go to the HBCUs and say, so tell us about some of your graduates and what are they doing? And you find these amazing stories of African-American entrepreneurs in the HBCUs primarily, Black men and women who had started businesses in the most difficult of circumstances and found a way to make it happen. And they were able to find the opportunity, dig out the resources, build the teams, and create organizations that were really the foundation of a lot of communities. One of the things that sort of opened up our relationship was to say, well, let's tell the Black story. Let's have an African-American protagonist. I love the story of going to a dean's conference at HBCUs for the business schools. And I said, we use a pedagogy of case studies. And case studies are tell the story, but there's an underpinning of understanding and rigor that says, where does this attach to the entrepreneurial process? What lessons are we learning? How do we put those lessons in a story, make it real for the student, but embed that learning so it becomes portable intellectual capital they can take into their businesses? And the dean raised his hand and said, how many Black entrepreneurs do you teach about? So, I said, none. Maybe one. So, there was a clear, and if you're an entrepreneur, and I say this all the time, as an entrepreneur, you have to stay acutely aware of the market. Well, for me, that says, oh my God, there's a huge market that's untapped. Could you imagine the incredible case studies we could write and the amount of learning that can occur, and the African-American entrepreneurs that can be educated? Imagine the value they could create. It'll be amazing. So we started a case writing series, and I can't remember how many cases we wrote, but it was dozens, if not a lot more. And then we started bringing the African-American professors to Babson and having exchanges, and we would learn from the HBCU curriculum, they would learn from the Babson curriculum. And a lot of those schools now have entrepreneurship, at least minors, and many of them have entrepreneurship majors, and have grown in the business schools through that. It was incredibly satisfying and an incredible learning experience for me.
Really, that concept of almost strategic foresight, of seeing the possibility. And that's been kind of my experience, just getting to talk to people like you and really some of the leaders of historically Black colleges and universities in North Carolina. Our headquarters is now in the Research Triangle of North Carolina, and we are surrounded by St. Augustine, Shaw University, Bennett College is down the road. And what we see is sort of this emergence and this desire for a lot of these organizations to come together, like you're talking about, partnership, where we come together and the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. And I love it because I love to hear from leaders like you that really talk about how disruption can propel us forward. I know one of your faculty that I'm a huge fan of, Heidi Neck, has written many books and has a textbook out. And I had shared with you earlier, I was at a conference in Orlando earlier this week, and people were talking about her textbook and what an amazing resource it is, and just how much of a difference it makes. And I think, regardless of where the road takes us together, I am so grateful to be connected to you, all of my colleagues at NACCE. I know the Weismillers are really excited to meet with you and your team. We're going to be coming together in June, and we have some ideas of things that we can do together that really, I think, will add even more to the conversation, because as you're acutely aware, I'm sure, Black-owned businesses were disproportionately hurt, through the pandemic. They didn't take advantage of the CARES Act for a lot of different reasons. And so we have the opportunity, and in concert with some players now in Washington that are concerned about this, to really make a difference. So I want to, just invite you to maybe share some closing comments.
Yeah, I think the opportunity for the to embed the entrepreneurial mindset is so much greater today. People see the urgency of action in a profound way as we come out of COVID. And some of the African American businesses that have been generated through community colleges and in the African American community suffered because they lacked scale. And if we can teach that. And the ambition is intense, and the impact on the economy, and frankly, the impact on the strengthening of the social fabric can be so profound that it would be a shame if we didn't do something with you. So, Babson wants to partner. We have a partner-first mentality. NACCE, I think, is one of those world-changing organizations that if we can partner with you, I think that we can do something very special, and I want to be your partner.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much. I really mean that when I say the conversations we have on this podcast are really designed to inspire people to make their way forward. And hearing your story and what you've done, I think about those 42,000 plus alumni that you have and the millions of community college students around the world. So I'm going to be dreaming and imagining what we are going to create together. And then we will bring you back, and maybe we'll have Heidi come with you, and we'll dive deeper into this concept. So I wish you, President Spinelli, and all of our listeners a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us.
Rebecca, you're a great leader. It's a pleasure to be a partner.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that listening to this podcast will help you to explore the many ways we might define entrepreneurship. Join us every other Wednesday for more episodes as we celebrate opportunity, learn from one another, and grow together. Subscribe to this podcast, connect with us on social media, and learn more about today's speakers at nacce.com/podcast. We look forward to making our way forward together with you.
Have you heard about our latest book, Impact Ed? How Community College Entrepreneurship Creates Equity and Prosperity? This is our roadmap for building back better in 50 states and globally. In each chapter, we share the inspiring stories of everyday entrepreneurs and explain how community colleges play a crucial role in their success. Visit us at nacce.com/impacted to order your copy now and join us in this work.
Join us on July 20th in Chattanooga, Tennessee for a pre-conference leadership workshop featuring podcast hosts and NACCE leaders Jeff and Becky. Hosted in partnership with EntreEd's Master Teacher Certification. This two-part workshop is ideal for faculty members, administrators, presidents, and leaders in your institution. Participate in a Presidents for Entrepreneurship pledge signing during the provided lunch. Get more information and save your seat at nacce.com or the link in this episode's description.